Doing what's right is never easy. You think you're right, but you lose track of what you were trying to do all along when there's blood and screaming and death. Doing a bad thing for a good end just sours the good. Storm, I don't think you're pulling it hard enough. Proteus grunted as he strained against my tugs. Quiet, Preed. I'm an experienced mare, and I know how to do it. I just have to try working at it from the left a little more is all. The thing was just being stubborn. But this was something I needed to do. It was hard to keep my mind focused when all last night I was thinking about it. There's just something so wrong about how it looked. Can I suggest we do this later? You're not going to get it off anytime soon, so let's just keep going. He let out a sigh, sounding like this was the most boring thing in the world to him. No, just one more good yank. I hooked my hooves as tightly as possible and pulled with all my strength. Without warning, I found myself tumbling back along the dirt next to the fire. Got it off! I held my prize proudly before me, throwing the broken pistol scope into the fire. And good riddance. You could have just ignored it for now. He rolled his eyes and floated the silver revolver up to me, waiting until I got it to my hooves before slipping it out into the custom leather holster strapped across my chest. I could have, but it was bothering me. I hooved the leather straps and strapped it over with the ornate bit. Something I noticed last night was that the lacquered wooden grips of the revolver had a pair of wrapped candied inlays in it on gold, and the cold metal tasted faintly like chocolate. The pitbuck also labeled it as Bon Appetit, making me wonder if it was the name of the gumdrop mare had picked, and if so, how did it know? Foolishly, I wondered what the name meant out loud, and Pi rambled on about how it meant enjoy your meal and fancy or whatever. In the interest of feeding ponies bullets, I unloaded the lever action and put more of the remaining hollow point shells into the revolver, loading up the rifle with the normal 44 ammo. And this could make me a bit more combat effective for when we ran into the next inconvenience on our journey. I may be out of place to ask, but are we going to Chasm? Proteus kicked some sand over the fire to put it out, while Will simply stamped on it repeatedly. The mechanical beast was getting low on power, but last night Pi assured me that he could make it there. If I'm to stay out of sight from any more bounty hunters, then isn't it wise to stay out of towns? You're correct on that, and if it were any other town, I'd agree. But my parents are practically Chasm's founders. I closed and locked the action on my rifle, watching as the display of my pitbuck updated. We'll pretty much have a free reign of the town when we get there. I looked over to Iron Will. Well, as long as they don't freak over him. How is it that your parents are so well regarded there? Why the hell was he talking with such an active approach to learning more about me? The exploits of my parents can't possibly be that interesting. My parents used to have a business that offered to scour dangerous ruins with pre-war stuff. Most of the time that meant turning off all the defenses or clearing out the dangerous creatures. So when they got what they came for, they left the rest open for the taking. I pulled myself to my hooves and started back towards the old southbound highway we had been following since yesterday. The warehouse they set up in was only the first half of it. Turns out that it was powered exclusively by geothermal plants. He caught up quickly, taking his place behind me. So the town has as much power as it needs by siphoning the access from the warehouse. Proteus sounded like a scholar as he rubbed his chin, looking to the cloud cover. Makes sense to me. Though this warehouse, where did they find it in the first place? I have no idea. Now that I thought about it, Mom and Dad never really told me what they brought back at all. It was just simple to me, as their jobs got food on the table for us, and shelter to live in, I never questioned what they might have been selling to pay the bills. I'll have to ask next time I swing by. Besides, I hardly see them anymore, so it'll be good to have an excuse to go. Well, that's a moot point to me, seeing as I'll not be around to hear the answer. Pred shrugged and trotted forward in indifference. It's a shame, truly. They sound like nice ponies, and meeting them would have made for a fantastic time. I cantered forward and spun, making him skid to a stop in the dirt. Look, Preed, I'm thankful for you to save my life, okay? He didn't seem too convinced, but he was going to hear what I needed to say. I've been trying to figure out a way to get you out of this contract, but we both know it's not going to be that easy. Though it would be a whole lot easier if I knew why there was a contract on you in the first place. And that's just it. I haven't the slightest. He stuck his muzzle at me as he simply trotted around me. I'm just as curious as you are to know why, and is why we must not keep them waiting. Chasm's just an afternoon away if we keep to it. All right, if you insist. I mumbled to myself, looking up to Iron Will. He had what almost looked like concern in his eyes, and it made me question myself again on just how I should feel about treating Pred. I glared at him, and held my hoof out sharply. Don't give me that look. Just a few more days and I won't have to care anymore. Astonished. We had walked for another 4 hours before breaking for lunch, whereupon Prettius prepared some of the fried hay in a can he had in his bags. And I found some bloat sprites to char up on the fire. Even while the meal had left my stomach in less than stable mood, we pressed on. The weather was good today, ignoring the cold winds that blew down from the Badland Mountains, weaving across the slowly rolling landscape that quickly became more rocky. Finally, after my pip-buck stated that we had walked about 6 hours, here we stood on the outskirts of Chasm. Well, that was the most flawless travel I've ever had in my life. Not a single raider, bounty hunter, or other asshole in sight the whole way. I scrunched my muzzle. Was I really complaining that something had gone right? Maybe the day is just the best day of my life, and here I am cursing it. Be careful what you say, boss. Irony is a cruel mare. Prettius whistled out as he stopped next to me. Disregarding his negativity, I've come to find that the town of Chasm is always growing. Every time I found myself this way, it seems that there's a new row of sheet metal shacks lining the outskirts. The small, busy homes aren't much to look at, but in the shadow of the Badland Mountains, they are enough to stave off the scattering roaming creatures. The thing about Chasm is that it's powered exclusively on geothermal power. For whatever reason, the power station was detached from an old warehouse building up the mountain path, and the weathering of the wastes over years had stripped the cowlings from the thick transmission cables, making them easy to reroute. This provided the ponies here with nearly unlimited power, and thus made it a highly sought-after location to live. As for how the residents here live, there was an old mine just a few thousand feet from the town, and it is still carrying quite a bit of copper in its veins. There are miles and miles of tunnels running under there, and that happens to be the reason for its name. Well, Prettius, I don't know about you, but my hooves are aching from walking and running the last few days. I nudged at him and smiled. How about we relax in the hot spring for a bit? Really loosen up for a while. Most of the ponies worked in the mines, but the ponies I respected the most worked at the spa. If I was lucky, this time Morning Dew wouldn't be in, and just her daughters would be working. Pred's face lit up. That would be quite delightful. Great. I just need to stop by the general store and dump some stuff that we pulled off those sisters. I licked my dry lips as I thought, feeling my body craving my one weakness. I really need some damn smokes. Chain smoking, as I had probably, wasn't the smartest thing to do, but hindsight's always a bitch. It was a short walk down the street to the store, and quickly the trip let me see just how lively the town had become. There were a group of colts and fillies laughing and playing around the schoolhouse, and the mares on break from working the forges were engaging in idle gossip. If you had just stepped out from one of those fancy stables in town, you might not have guessed that the world had ever ended. It was part of that feeling making me want to just stay here forever, cropping up wherever I happened to go through this place. Pushing open the door to the general store, I was met with the loud voice of its owner and town mayor. "Hey there, friend. We haven't seen you in town for some time. How have you been?" Touchy-feely's overly enthusiastic voice always sent a shiver down my spine. He tipped his top hat with his hoof before pulling me into a hug that I couldn't refuse. "What brings you back to our little slice of paradise?" I couldn't see it, but I just knew he was looking at Pred. "Ah, finally looking to settle down?" "No, I started to say before he let go and pushed past me. "Well, hello there, stranger. Welcome to Chasm, friendliest town this side of the wasteland." I turned just in time to watch Prettius smile nervously from his hug, patting Touchy on his back. "And that's one hell of a mare you got your hooves on. Practically owned the whole town of her parents, you know. But history comes later. Right now, I can tell you two are going to start love and starting a family here." "Mayor, we're just here for a quick visit." I gave him a tap on the shoulder. "Though it's always nice to see you again. We just need some supplies and then we'll be off." "Nonsense." He pushed away from Preet and waved his hooves at me. "If you must leave again, then I insist you at least spend the night. Relax and enjoy yourselves at the inn, maybe get some real thought to staying with us." He nudged at Prettius. "Could really use another family to expand our community, and I'm sure you'd want a safe place to raise your foals." "Foals?" Prettius stammered with a nervous look on his face. He looked to me for help, and I just shrugged. "I don't think we—" Touchy cut him off again. "I can tell you aren't convinced yet. Well, I'll tell you what. Consider the night at the inn my gift to you, only as long as you put some real thought into staying." He held his hoof out to Prettius with a wide grin. "Deal?" Pred eyed me with a shrug, taking the mayor's hoof in his and giving it a firm shake. "Excellent. Now, what supplies can I get you two in the evening, or that in the event that you, don't stay?" "Cigarettes, healing items, food. You know, the usual." I simply spoke up, glaring at Prettius. The mayor nodded and trot off to the back room to gather his items. "Pred, what the hell are you doing?" "I offered the hot springs so we could relax for maybe a few hours, not spend the night here." "Well, you heard the guy. It's a free night, so why don't we use it?" Prettius cocked an eyebrow and looked over me. "Besides, you've not had any real rest since before we met. Why not take the day off?" I grumbled my disapproval, but didn't say anything as the mayor returned. "Here we are. Now, will that be caps or trade?" He set down half a carton of cigarettes, nearly as a full roll of shimmering bandages, a half syringe of Medex, 2 cans of condensed corn, and a couple of bottles of dirty water. "Trade. But I've got some caps if the balance is off." I pulled out the .308 ammo, as Prettius unslung the sniper rifle from himself. Alongside those, we set the quart of oil, the toaster, and the bag of chips I'd found. We should have enough food to last us, and I only need about half the carton, seeing as I'll be back in a few days. So the rifle, ammo, and toaster should be enough to trade. Touchy winced. "Oh, well, you see, one of our most reliable traders moved in last month, so we lost some of our trade. I won't be able to offer you that deal, and even with what you've set out, you'll be a bit short." He paused. "But for you? Sure." "Thanks." I smiled and nodded to Prettius, who picked up the supplies in his magic and put them in his bag, floating one of the cigarette packs to me. I couldn't shake it, but something was scratching at the back of my mind, clawing its way to the front quickly. "Oh, before I forgot about the enormous mechanical beast following us. Do you have any spark batteries? He scrunched up his muzzle. No, fresh out, I'm afraid. He shrugged with a smile. You know we don't need 'em here, seeing as we got all the power we could want. We've got a friend who needs them, though. Any idea where we could get them? Preet asked, not wanting to say any more than that. Putting a hoof to his muzzle, the mayor thought. I can ask Sappet down at the mine. Maybe he's got some of his equipment that he can let go of. He let out another grin. I'll be sure to ask him when the miners return from their work this evening. If he has a few, I'll have him leave them here in the morning tomorrow, and we can discuss payment then. Sounds good. Thanks again, Mayor. I got to my hooves and hoofed the pack into my mouth, drawing out one of the smokes. No need to be so formal. Just call me Touchy. He tipped his hat to me. I hope you too have a relaxing evening. Do think on my offer to stay. I know you'd both love it here. Before I could object, he hoofed at my mane roughly with a laugh, giving Preetius a wink. And if you do plan on staying, don't be afraid to start that family tonight, if you know what I mean, stud. Yeah, we got it. I rolled my eyes and headed for the door, watching as Preetius looked more disturbed than nervous now. As I pushed the door open, I whispered to him, Now you see why I said only a few hours. I've made a huge mistake. He whispered back, blinking as I could tell he was trying to get certain images out of his mind. Yeah. Well, now we've got to deal with it. I hoofed out my lighter, flicking it open and using it. Taking a quick drag helped me relax and refocus my thoughts for a moment. Come on. At least what we can do is use the hot springs. Reluctantly, he followed as I continued up the street, the smell of molten copper wafting heavily as we passed large buildings which never darkened. The heavy automation of the forges inside never ceased to amaze me. But as I wanted to see what Preetius thought, he seemed distant and unconcerned with the spectacle. He was all around an odd stallion, but there had to be something weighty on his mind to ignore something like that. Don't mind me, he spoke up, only shifting his gaze to me after, just reminiscing of times long past. Because that didn't make him sound ominous whatsoever. Quite the spectacle, you'd agree? The wonders of the old world running again, helping out ponies to rebuild what they've lost through their own stupidity. He frowned and continued. Though, hopefully not everything we've lost. We don't need another pointless war. I slowed enough for him to catch up, and threw my hoof around his neck to pull him close. Don't worry about that. We're too busy killing each other for scraps from the last one. Taking another long drag from my smoke, I looked about to the happy ponies living around the town. Besides, you've seen the ponies around here. How many of them do you think care about the world outside of this town? He didn't answer to me as I let him go, only returning to the forlorn look he wore before. I just can't help but think that this is where we are heading again. This town isn't happy. It's ignorant. They've fallen into the same trappings that ponies a century and a half ago did, and it's only going to lead them down the same path. I groaned. You can't take what you've read and translate it to the wasteland. They live in the present. They know what happened to the old world, and they've decided not to be a part of the horrors in the rest of the lands. I turned off the main street when I spotted the large two-story inn tucked up against the mountainside, steam rising up from the tunnels behind it where the hot springs were located. I finished my cigarette and spit out the butt. Come on, it's right up here. The inn had to be the building in town with the most thought put into its design, also happening to be the only building in town with a fresh coat of paint on it. There hadn't been a building here when the town was founded. Rather, they built it out of various wooden scraps that they pulled from other structures, or had carted across the land. Its design was like none that I'd ever seen elsewhere in my travels, and its most unique feature was its curved tile roof. The stark off-white of its painted exterior always made it seem inviting, and generally I enjoyed my stays here. This is an interesting design. Something inspired by the Nanpon Islands, I bet. I had always heard that they were lost in the oceans, but seeing this makes me wonder if it's still possible to get there. Proteus spoke up, trotting ahead of me as he might as well have been speaking a different language. I'll leave you out here to ogle while I get things set up. I stopped as I spoke, remembering what happened last time he was alone. On second thought, you're staying with me. I don't need you to get in any more fights this week. I stopped at the door as he looked over the building, tapping my hoof on the ground as my patience for him waned. Preed, get your flank over here, now! Oh, fine. Sure thing, boss. He stuttered for a moment before trotting up to me. Lead the way. You don't have to stay with me, just don't wander off out of my sight. I pushed the door open to the lobby, and I cringed as the small chime of bells rang out above my head. Well, if Morning Dew heard that, there goes our chance for the hot springs. Just wait a minute! The voice of a young mare called out from one of the rooms across the lobby. From the way it sounded, it had to be missed. Indeed, she popped her head through one of the doorways behind the lobby desk, a wide smile parting her muzzle. Storm! I'm so glad to see you again! Her smile dropped as she looked concerned over as she saw Preed. You didn't bring Pal this time? She told me last month she'd be back as soon for another session. I blinked a few times at that. Why, that sneaky little feathered liar! I knew she was still into mares. I'm sure she would have liked to come, but there was an accident before we got to Dodge, so she's there at the clinic. I spoke up, lacking the normal delicacy. Oh, goddesses, is she hurt? I could already see Gleam tearing up at the thought. I can't believe it. She's fine, Gleam. I glared over to Proteus, who just kept his eyes anywhere but on me. Shortstaff just got himself a little banged up. Give them a couple days and I'm sure you'll see them again. Oh, I see. Gleam smiled and gave a quiet laugh. Sorry, she's just a valued client. Don't worry about it. I'm sure she'll pop by sooner than later. I spoke as I walked further into the spacious open lobby, looking around all the empty and open rooms on the floor above us. Wow, no guests? Normally you're full up in the winter months. Well, with the amount of ponies who decided to stay after finding this town, the only real folks we get here to stay are the merchants and unsavory types. We've got a merchant from the boneyard up in the room 3, and a wing of Talons up in rooms 8 and 9. She sighed. It's not like we have a lot of overhead, but we're just not making the money we used to. She smiled at me. But you're here, so that's good. What's it been, almost a year? Just over a year, actually. Touchy really put his all into the please stay speech this time, and gave us a night to spend here. I scoffed at the floor and looked down to it. If I had done business so slow, I would have bartered harder to pay you some caps. It's fine. If he wanted to put you up, I might as well make it worth your while. Her horn lit up softly as she lifted a small key from behind the desk. Here, take the suite. I held my hoof out as she dropped the key into it, not sure if I should give it back or not. You know your mother's going to hate you for that, right? She's not too fond of the business I do, so any special treatment... While true, she'll just complain to Touchy and get compensation out of whatever room I give you anyway. This might help us more in the long run. She smiled. Well, if that's the case, do you mind if we sneak in and use the springs? I wanted so badly to just sit back and relax for a few hours. I don't mind, but if my mother catches you, you'll have to pay before you leave. She smiled. Go ahead and put your things in your room, and I'll have Lomi bring you some robes to wear. I really must get back to work, but maybe we can talk some more later. Waving, she turned and went back into the room she had been in. I don't know why, but among all the murderous thieves, mutated monstrosities, and generally unlikable ability of ponies nowadays, there are just some I can't help but feel comfortable around. Most are family, but then there are ponies like Gleam and Lomi, who, when you meet, make you feel like you've won the proverbial wasteland lottery. Perhaps my luck hasn't been bad recently, rather just balancing out for all the good I've never realized I had. Funnily enough, there was only one stallion who made it all possible. Thanks again, Gleam. I waved back and turned to Pretius. All right, Preed, you heard the mayor? Get your flank upstairs into the suite. We've got a lot of relaxing to do. Goddesses, this is good, I sighed out, enjoying as the water warmed all the places on me that needed it, filling every nick, scar, and crevice with the feeling of pure heaven. I must admit it's quite relaxing in here. Pretius spoke out through the fence that separated us. I was always told that the wall was put in due to some old-world tradition to conserve privacy, but it probably had more to do with the sign on the wall saying, "Do not taint the water," scrawled just above the crude drawing of a mare and a stallion doing what comes naturally. I should make a point to come back here again sometime. Now you know why most ponies who come for the springs stay. I sighed, closing my eyes and laying back against the warm mountain rocks, breathing deeply a few times and loving the warm feeling in my lungs. There was a sound of hoop steps coming towards us from the outside of the springs, and for a moment I held my breath. Is everything all right, Miss Storm? Lomi opened the fence gate and leaned her head in, the dark zebra stripes contrasting to the low light against her yellow coat and brown mane. She gained the softest of smiles when I nodded. It's wonderful, Lomi, as always. I sighed out and let my forelegs float in the warm water. Maybe you could take a break and join us. She giggled. As luxurious as that sounds, alas, I cannot. I'm to prepare dinner for the other guests. Which brings up the question, will you be joining us? The prospect of having dinner with Morning Dew was one that I didn't care for. I won't. I started to speak before the loud creak filled the air. I looked in the direction it came from, and found the pitbuck told me that there was someone on the other side of the fence. There was a loud crack as the whole section of fence gave away into the spring pool opposite mine and Preed's. I scrambled out of the water and tensed myself to fight whoever it might be. Fucking hot? The figures splashed and yelped as they pulled themselves from under the fence. The zebra that emerged was one I hadn't seen in a long time, and I'd hoped it would have been even longer. Ficha, is that you? I squinted as he sprawled, his soaking form on top of the floating fence, panting heavily. Goddesses, it's like you haven't aged a day, physically or mentally. Spying on mares again? Lomi growled, floating a broom across the room and batting him repeatedly on the head. I always forgot that she has a horn, and that her being a zoni makes it small enough that it appears to be hidden in her mane. If you weren't the law already, I'd have you locked up. Wait, you made Ficha your sheriff? I looked at her with bewilderment. He's a goddess damn pervert and good for nothing. Two-timing son of a bitch. My attention was pulled away with a silver flash, and the broom head was liberated from the handle. Ficha resheathed a broadsword he had strapped to his side, and ran his hoof back over his head, slicking back his black and white mane. Stepping off the fence and up with me to the rocky pathway, a sly smile formed across his face. Ladies, there's no need for anger. I was only ensuring that you hadn't passed out and drowned. Heat exhaustion is a dangerous possibility in the springs. He put his hoof to his chest and stood proudly. No need to thank me for looking out for you. I'm just doing my job as the sheriff, to protect any pony in town. Thank you! You broke our fence! Lomi growled and flipped the broom handle around, smacking him with the blunt end of it. Who's going to fucking pay for that? You? Get the fuck out of here before I get Mother. All right, all right. He swung his forehoof to fend off the broomstick assault, looking to me and straightening up again. He stepped up to me and reached his hoof up, going to brush my mane from my eyes. That wasn't going to happen. Mi amor, as beautiful. I hooked my hoof around his leg, spun, and pulled him onto my back, bucking him up and flipping him over me into the pool, which was much hotter than the one he had been in. He splashed down into it with wide eyes and flailed his hooves, letting out heated whines as he struggled to pull himself from the water. His playful attitude was gone as he grimaced at me. Don't you try that fancy worded bullshit on me. I scowled and watched as Lomi floated a towel for me. I don't know how you convinced them to let you be the law around here, and you may have fooled them, but remember, I know all your fucking tricks. I wrapped the towel around myself and shook my head. Can't even relax without a dick like you showing up. This has to be the perfect fucking week. Now I'm just as tense as before I got in. I don't know. I, for one, found it rejuvenating. Proteus smartly remarked as he trod out of his own enclosure, using his magic to dry his mane with his towel. Preed, not now, I barked. Thank you, Lomi, but we'll be retiring to our rooms for the night. No problem. It's always nice to see you. She smiled and stepped out of the way as I trod by. If anything, Preed and I could stand to get an early night's rest, but I still wanted to sort everything and clean out my rifle with that kit we got from the sisters. I squinted in confusion as we walked back through the caves towards the inn. Did I just use the thought, we? He hasn't done anything in a fight to earn the spoils from it. Well, besides saving my life. Damn it! Why do I have to genuinely like the guy? Something on your mind, boss? He asked, craning his neck towards me with a concerned look. If it's about that guy back there, I'm sure he won't be bothering you again. What? No. He's not the one on my mind. I sighed. But damn, do I need another smoke? Okay, whatever you say. He shrugged and continued walking, watching the clock on my pip-buck tick over to 7 p.m., marking that it was now completely dark outside. At least the town would still be lit. I don't need any more dark hallways. I shuddered before realizing I hadn't seen Sun Pony in a while. Pie, you still in there? I shook my pip-buck, wondering if I had actually shouldn't have taken it into the hot springs. Though, I guess I didn't have a choice, seeing as I don't really know how to take it off. But it's plain my vision flickered from green to pink as she popped out into a bright smile, and a party hat? She looked up and gasped, hoofing it off quickly. Oops, you weren't supposed to see that, sis, and I can't talk to you until later. She scrunched her muzzle up and looked around. I think I left the hot water on. Sorry, gotta go. With a flicker, she disappeared again. Huh. Proteus canted his head and looked at me. What do you suppose that was all about? I have no idea, but she's never really made any sense anyway. I just wanted to make sure she was alright, and I did. I'm tired of things not going my way. Let's just get back to the room. I felt a headache coming on, and getting a quick nap could do me a world of good, seeing as I can just feel that my night is only starting to fuck me over, because nothing ever works out the way I plan anymore. Chapter end. The time to relax is when you don't have time for it. Quests finished, none. Quests started, none. Levels earned, none. Perks earned, none.